So in regards to the first two, the personnel principle, when in doubt, don't hire, keep looking. Make sure those people adhere to those core values. And there's a great quote from a Wells Fargo executive. The only way to deliver to the people who are achieving is to not burden them with the people who are not achieving. So while we have a tendency to care about everyone, and we should, we have to care most about the people that are most adhering to our core values, most adhering to our purpose, and achieving at the highest levels.
Welcome back, everyone. We're going to slowly let people jump in. Robert, where are you out? Where are you out of, man? Are you at your home, Miami?
Miami, Florida.
Nice, dude. Tell me, while people are jumping in, tell me about the bats. What's up with the bats?
Before real estate, I played ball. There's a company called Victus. When I was playing, it was a small bat company in Pennsylvania. They had 10 people. Now they're the number one across all baseball. It's called Victus. Amazing quality. But the top ones are commemorative from when I got drafted and signed. The third one right there is what I used when I played. And then the rest of them are, this is a bat we made with Jocko. And then these are the companies I help run.
That's cool, man.
So yeah.
That's very, very cool. Well, welcome back to another Lofty webinar. I was used to saying chime so people could chime in, but we have to change that whole thing up. So Lofty, and for those of you who don't know, Robert Lucido Group Worldwide. These guys are amazing. So I always love talking to Robert because I'm always taking notes. Robert, I'm ready. You have a presentation. Let's go.
Well, Tristan, you're the most fanatical note taker I've ever seen. You even post your journals. So I expected that to be the case. All right. So we're already getting questions in the chat box. The answer to that one is no, but we'll keep moving on. All right. So first, today's topic is the moves top teams are making. Going to take maybe a slightly different approach than what you may be expecting coming in, which is whenever we're thinking about business planning, it's always about what we're going to do. But first, we're going to back up and address some prerequisite things, some precursors.
Okay.
And those have to do a lot with the who aspects. So instead of jumping right to what we're going to do, let's back up and look at the who aspects. So one thing that I will challenge you, whenever you come onto a webinar, you can always expect that I'm going to challenge the status quo or conventional wisdom. And I think with everything going on in the industry right now, that's probably the healthiest thing we can have. I think the people that have the most experience and are so confident that they know how everything is and should stay that way are the ones that are going to have the hardest time over the next 2 years. I think those that have the most outside the box thinking, challenge the status quo, and innovate over the next 2 years are going to position themselves to be the most successful. So I'll make a commitment and promise you that whenever you attend a webinar, I will challenge status quo and offer you outside the box thinking. So the first thing you should be doing for your top move for 2024 has to come down to your core ideology. And by that, I mean your core values and your purpose. So what are your core values and your core purpose? Now, and why furthermore are these important? The first is that growth is going to require you to innovate and embrace change, but that change has to be grounded in a solid and clear foundation. In other words, you need to preserve your core while constantly seeking to stimulate progress. If you don't have that anchor, your boat will eventually drift off course. So before we get into the what we're going to do, we need to get in touch with a clear sense of what that core ideology is, what are our values, and what our central purpose is. And to get at those, you can ask yourself these two questions. First, what values would we strive to live for even 100 years down the road, regardless of changing in the external environment? So those, if you answer that, those are your core values. What are you unwilling to compromise on, regardless of what happens in the external environment? And the second, the twin question to that, getting at your purpose is, why not just shut down the organization today, cash out, sell off the assets? Why not just walk away? Whatever your answer to that question is, that driving force for why you're still in this business. Okay, so those are the two questions to get at. Answering those will get at your core ideology. Visionary companies have clarity around who they are and what they're trying to achieve, and they tend not to have much room for people unwilling or unsuited to those demanding standards. That's from Jim Collins. In order for you to fulfill that, you have to have obviously a clear sense of what your core ideology is. And furthermore, everyone on your team, everyone in your organization has to have that same sense of clarity around who we are and what we're trying to achieve. If you can't answer that question, I guarantee you no one else can. And if you can't, or if your team members can't, then I guarantee you're underperforming relative to where you could be. Throughout this presentation, I'll pull in a bunch of different case studies. I love looking at different success stories from other companies and helping to contextualize the things we're talking about. So right here is Masaru Ibuka. He founded Sony. Now, when he founded Sony, it was actually in the ruins of World War II. Literally think about Tokyo being completely decimated after World War II from all the bombing and all the conflicts. And so when he started Sony, he really had no clear sense around what they were going to build. But he had a compelling driving force, and that was twofold. First, he wanted to help rebuild the country that he loved and to rebuild it into something better. And then secondly, he wanted to do that by completely revolutionizing the perception of what manufacturing looked like in Japan. At that time, Japan was known for cheap, low-grade manufacturing. He wanted to help transform Japan to be the steeple of what top-tier manufacturing could be. He had that vision, but he had no idea what they were going to make. And I'll show you later what the evolution looked like and how he went from product to product and eventually found success. So if the world's greatest companies could all articulate a clear ideology at the start of the company, what may surprise you is that many of them, in fact, most of them, had no clear idea of what products they were going to make. And certainly those early products were not big winners. In fact, there's a book, I know, Tristan, you like it. Only 3 of the visionary companies, the most visionary companies, had instant successes. So what this gets at is it's far more important for you to have a clear sense of your ideology and purpose than it is for a tactical roadmap of what you're going to do and create. Put the horse before the cart. If you have a clear sense of your core ideology, that will allow for your sense of self-confidence. And that self-confidence is necessary for you to get to where you want to be, because inevitably you're going to have ups and downs, and you need to be resolute in what you believe in and what you're striving to accomplish, regardless of those external circumstances. And the flip side to that is you have to also hold yourself to a high level of self-criticism that pushes yourself for self-induced change rather than just waiting for the market to force you in one direction or the other. If you don't know who you are or what you're trying to achieve, you can't have either of those things. And one of the things over the past couple of years that's become really apparent in my own personal life is the power of having that clear sense, because you can walk into any meeting, any pitch, and you can sell stuff that you don't even have really ready to deliver if you believe it enough and you're committed enough to actually delivering by that date. If you think about it, that may seem like out of sorts, but pre-revenue companies go into VC firms and private equity firms all the time and get pre-revenue valuations. And some of them walk out with millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, based upon an idea and a compelling belief in that idea. That's how powerful this is, and it can make a tremendous difference on your business. Another thing that we can basically focus in on is what's called the Stockdale paradox. This is named after an admiral named James Stockdale, who was shot down and was imprisoned for 7.5 years in the Hanoi Hilton, so in Vietnam, during the Vietnam War. And what this paradox basically means is to piggyback off what we just talked about, is maintaining an unwavering faith that you can and will prevail in the end, while at the same time having the discipline to confront whatever the most brutal facts of reality are. So, he talks about when he was in that Hanoi prison, it was the optimists that were the ones that essentially lost their wits, that couldn't tolerate the torture and the constant onslaught anymore. And so he basically came up with this philosophy, and he actually wrote out basically a code of ethics for all the prisoners in the camp. And that was basically maintaining an unflinching self-confidence that they would eventually get out, while also confronting in a realistic format what the horrors that they were going to expect to confront on a daily basis. And around that core belief, he created this code of ethics, which helped many of the prisoners survive that camp and protect many of our national secrets. So that's the Stockdale paradox. So with each section, I'll give you some action items. So for the core ideology, first, answer those questions, establish or at least reaffirm what your core values are. And then make sure everyone in your organization has those and fully understands them and believes in them. If they don't believe in them, they're probably not a fit for your team. Number two is to mobilize on the basis of these values. So it's not just enough to write out what you believe. You actually have to believe it. And if you don't believe it, it's not informing your actions. And vice versa, if you do believe it, it is going to be the driving force behind your actions. Number three, that's establish or reaffirm your purpose. So the twin aspect of that. So you have the core ideology. Now we're going to establish or reaffirm your purpose, and then make sure, literally in this book right here, Built to Last, they talk about it. It sounds a little bad, but they call it indoctrination of team members. If you have such a strong culture and such a belief in your core values, literally the process of onboarding a new team member is treated almost like an indoctrination process. Some of the best companies literally have cheers that they would make their employees sing about those core values. So it sounds super corny. I certainly wouldn't want to do it. But when your company is worth hundreds of billions of dollars, something may be working in the right direction there.
I heard you're working on a brand new song for all new team members.
Me? No, but I will share. We had a team meeting yesterday, and one of our team members actually was a cheerleader in college, and she led a chant on the call.
Oh, dude.
So
that's kind of cool, though, man.
There you go. It was all about taking action. So
yeah,
it works for football. Maybe it works for business. Okay, so first who, then what? So again, we're really focusing on the people aspect before the action aspect. There's going to be three sections of the first who part. Number one is to get the wrong people off the bus. Number two is to get the right people in the right seats. And then number three is to promote from within. So what does it mean to get the wrong people off the bus? To dig into that, we'll look at a case study from David Maxwell, who took over Fannie Mae in the early 80s. Fannie Mae at the time was losing over $1 million per day. They had $52 billion worth of loans that were underwater. And he was tasked with taking over this sinking ship and to turn it around. And he led Fannie Mae for the next 10 years, and he led it to a point where they were making over $4 million per day, and completely changed the face of what homeownership looks like in the United States from his leadership. When he took over, like I said, they were losing $1 million per day. When he left, they not only were making $4 million per day, but it's all relative. They outperformed the market by 4x. He was named one of the greatest CEOs of all time by Fortune magazine in 2003. So what did David Maxwell do when he took over this absolute, I won't cuss, but pile of trash that he had to take over? So the first thing he did was he held off on developing a strategy before he got the right people on the bus. And he put this at significant cost. Can you imagine taking over? The board just appointed you, and you're going into the board and saying, the board's looking for solutions, and you're going to go in and say, look, we're not going to do anything. And we're not going to do anything while you're losing $1 million every day. And he did that because that's how much he believed in getting the right people on the bus before deciding where you're going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first thing he did was he laid it absolutely crystal clear out that Fannie Mae would only have seats for A players who are going to put forth A+ efforts. And if you weren't up to that, no harm done. You better get off the bus now. And of the 27 executive team members, 16 of them left. Great. He then replaced them. Then they mobilized the plan. So get the wrong people off the bus. If we turn it around, if we try to be the nice guy and tolerate keeping the wrong people around, what does that really do? First of all, it's unfair to the right people that are in your organization. And having the wrong people on the bus will corrode your culture and degrade your standards. And that will drive all the best people away that you already have. And lastly, it deprives that employee from getting into a more suitable company, a more suitable role for them sooner. So you're doing yourself no favors by tolerating, a lack of adherence to your own standards, your own core ideology. So a principle for managing your personnel is when you know you need to make a people change, act. If you create a place where the best people always have a seat on the bus, they're more likely to support changes in direction. That is incredibly important right now with everything and all the changes that are going to be going on in our industry. If you're running a team, for example, we're going to have changes that we're rolling out in January. A lot of them positive, but not all of them, and depending on how some people may interpret them. But if you create that situation where you only have the best people on the bus, those people are more likely to support changes in direction. They believe in it. They believe the core ideology. They believe in the purpose. So this is an incredibly important principle to adopt right now, leading into next year. So key questions around personnel decisions of people that are already on the bus. One, would you hire the person again? If the answer is no, I think you already have your answer. And if the answer is no, why do you still have them on the bus? And number two, would you feel terribly disappointed if they resigned? If the answer is no, your heart already knows, your head already knows what the decision you should make. So whenever you are dealing with a personnel decision, or even if you're just you could make this a perfunctory part of your personnel reviews every year. It could start off by simply answering those two questions. Any good employee will pass those with flying colors, and then you can get into the more deep dive on the KPI review. But if they can't satisfy those two questions, don't waste any more of your time. They're not a fit for your ship. Honest, and to give a little bit deeper there, honest and able employees that are underperforming, you give them the opportunity, you put them on a performance improvement plan, and at the very least, reassign them to a different seat on the bus. If they're a good person, if they're hardworking, but they're just not succeeding in their current role, you need to ask yourself and perhaps ask them if there is another role on your bus that would be better suited for them. However, if they're dishonest, lazy, unable, just not performing for whatever inexcusable reason, that's grounds for immediate dismissal. So you need to segment those two, and you need to differentiate between the honest and able and just the people that are just not a fit for reasons you can't tolerate. To help you do that, I'm actually sharing right now, this is the performance improvement plan that we use internally for our organization. So you can go ahead and scan this QR code right now, and you can download it for free. It's the exact template that we use for all our employees and team members. It's been very effective in working with agents on a performance improvement plan. It's not something that's very common in the industry, but it's a really beneficial tool to, if someone's not on course, how do you systematically help them course correct? And so this is the tool we use. So I'll give you another couple seconds to download that right now.
I'm downloading it right now, buddy. I just put in my email. Got it.
All right.
All right. Good.
Second part. Now we got the wrong people off the bus. Now we need to make sure we get the right people and get those right people in the right seats. So to start, let's take a look at a company called Nucor. Nucor is a steel company, and they had a really interesting go-to-market strategy. It wasn't sourcing the cheapest steel. It wasn't import. It wasn't any of that. It had to do with whom they were going to employ to help make their steel. And their whole core belief was that you could teach farmers how to make steel, but you couldn't teach a farmer's work ethic to people that didn't have it in the first place. And so instead of incorporating and putting their factories and mills in areas like Pittsburgh, instead they put them in areas like in rural Oklahoma, rural Indiana, where there was a high percentage of farming population. Then they took those and they paid the wages. They paid higher wages than any other steel company in the world to people that had no experience in manufacturing steel before. However, 50% of their comp plan was tied to the productivity of their team. And so this fostered an environment not just of teamwork, but of accountability. And there was one famous situation where there was actually team members that chased another team member off the factory floor with an iron angle because that person was compromising the overall efforts of the entire team. And so
Wow.
Nucor took this approach and was very successful with it. I'll pop back. A key part is that Nucor did not aim to turn lazy people into hard workers, but they sought to create an environment where the hardworking people would thrive and lazy workers would either jump or get off the bus right now. And as I mentioned, there was one notable example where those steel workers literally chased the lazy teammate right off the plant with their tools that they were using to bend the iron. The purpose of compensation should not be to get the right behaviors out of the wrong people, but it's to get the right people on the bus in the first place and to keep them there. We have a tendency to try to incentivize people. Like if you would only do this, then you would get the success, especially with independent contractors. You know, we tend to use money as the compelling reason. But one of the things that if you read any of Jim Collins' books or in your personal experience, you'll probably realize the most successful people succeed because of a compelling force that drives them, separate and a precursor to compensation. They're going to succeed and do anything they can because it's what they truly believe is right. And you could see that with David Maxwell, for example, the first case study we looked at. He turned Fannie Mae around so well and they made it so successful that when he was retiring, he had a $20 million severance package. And at that time, I mean, it was it had a government charter. And so he was concerned about the optics and potential backlash coming from Washington of a executive of a company with a corporate charter having too large of a severance package. And so he volunteered to not take the remaining 5.5 million of it, just because he believed in what Fannie Mae's mission was and what they had created. So in regards to the first two, personnel principle, when in doubt, don't hire, keep looking. Make sure those people adhere to those core values. And there's a great quote from a Wells Fargo executive. The only way to deliver to the people who are achieving is to not burden them with the people who are not achieving. So while we have a tendency to care about everyone, and we should, we have to care most about the people that are most adhering to our core values, most adhering to our purpose, and achieving at the highest levels. So your action items here in hiring, place a greater weight on those character attributes. It's easy to try to use proxies like, oh, they went to this college. Oh, they studied this. Oh, they had this GPA. But what's more important as a prerequisite is that they adhere to those core values that you hold most dear. So that should be your prerequisite, not a corporate, or excuse me, not a, you know, I went to a great college, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what their diploma says or from where. First and foremost is about who they are, and look for ways that you can substantiate who they are and why they're a fit. Number two is to give honest, hardworking, and able people every opportunity to succeed. And that's where we talked about if someone's not succeeding in their current role, is there a better role that's more suited for them? And number three is to orient your compensation towards the right candidate, audacious goals, and to reward them with above market wages for above average outcomes. So again, we should never structure how we operate or what we believe or how we compensate around not our target candidate. We shouldn't be throwing money at people that are underperforming for their own negligence or unwilling to just adhere and work hard. So always structure your actions towards the rule, not the exception. Number three, sorry, jumped too fast. Number three is to promote from within. And this is something that has really appealed to me over the last year. And to start, we'll look at Nordstrom's here. Nordstrom seeks to hire young people, mold them into the Nordstrom way, which is a real thing. It's literally like we talked about indoctrination. There is a Nordstrom way in their onboarding process. So they mold them, and then they promote those who most closely reflect those core values. Everyone starts at the bottom in Nordstrom's. You start on the sales floor, and everyone gets promoted from there. And 50% of their new hires are gone before they're even their 1-year anniversary. So everyone starts at the bottom. They must adhere to the Nordstrom way, and those that most adhere to the Nordstrom way get promoted. One thing, it's somewhat unrelated, but I really love this, is whenever they have their division or their regional meetings, basically corporate sets goals for those locations. But the individual locations also set their goals and they present their goals. After they present them, corporate presents their goals. So you see what they're striving to and what corporate says, hey, these are your goals for the year. If the location comes in below what corporate, they all get booed. If the location comes in with goals higher than what corporate is expecting, they get celebrated. I really like that. I really like that paradigm of driving people to strive for more ambitious goals. That is part of the Nordstrom way. I just shared that because I thought it was a cool aspect of their philosophy. So in that book I just mentioned, the one right here, Built to Last, it analyzed these visionary companies, and it took 1,700 years of combined experience across the most visionary, longest lasting companies that were the subject of the book. They only found 4 incidents of going outside the company to hire a CEO. So there's a really strong correlation between promoting within and having longevity of success. And it makes perfect sense. And this was kind of an eye-opening moment to me. If we're constantly going outside of our organization to hire for a role, we are doing that implicitly because we do not believe there is someone in our current organization that's good enough or a fit for that role. And so if we have to constantly go outside, it's because we haven't done a good enough job to this point of finding the people that fit that core ideology and promoting those people from within. So your action item here is just to do that. Promote from within whenever possible. Of course, it may not be always possible. There's capacity, but this should be your first thought. Is there anyone in our organization that would be a great fit for this new role? So now that we've tackled all of the who, let's segue a little bit into the what. So we've established we've got the right people on the bus in the right seats. Now it's time to actually start driving the bus to where we want to go. So that begs the question, where do we want to go? And to answer that question, we're going to look at it in the paradigm of what's called the hedgehog concept. And the end result of this is basically you should be focusing on what you can be the best in the world at, not just what you can do better than Joe Schmo down the road. But if you're trying to be a truly remarkable company, if you're trying to outperform over an extended period of time, what is there something that you can absolutely be the best at, definitively be the best at? And that should be the central point of your business plan. So that's the shaded region in the 3 concentric circles. The top one is, what are you deeply passionate about? That's your core ideology, what I walked you through to start. So answering those questions, writing it down, disseminating that through your team. What are you deeply passionate about? The bottom right is what drives your economic engine. And so I would challenge you to create one key performance indicator. Maybe it's profit per sale or revenue per sale or profit per employee or profit per agent. Whatever most closely aligns with your go-to-market strategy, pick one KPI that everything should be assessed against. And then lastly, as I mentioned, what can you be the best in the world at? So where the intersection of those 3 things, that basically becomes your central purpose of what we're going to strive for. And I promised you when we were talking earlier about Sony, their path to success. And I mentioned that most companies' success wasn't, it just fell on their lap right from the get-go. Like there was some revolutionary product that just compelled them on a path. In Sony's, again, he had a mission of rebuilding Japan and making it into the manufacturing capital of the world. He didn't know what to make. So first they started with a rice cooker, a simple rice cooker. It was a big failure. Then he tried to do a tape recorder, and that was similarly a failure. And so this amazing company that we all know is like the gold standard for TVs now, they were forced to creating heating pads and bean paste soup just to stay alive. just to keep the company afloat.
Wow.
And as they're making heating pads and bean paste soup, he assembled enough resources to basically create one what's big audacious goal, which basically became the transistor radio. So at that time, radios were huge. And he had the goal that said, we are going to go out and find a way to manufacture a radio that can fit in your shirt pocket. And they did that, and that was a huge success. And he won the Nobel Prize for that radio. So super humble beginnings. Success didn't come to him right away, but he had a clear purpose, clear ideology, knew what he was trying to create, and he simply took action and found what eventually made him successful. He's no exception. Does anyone know how Marriott got started? Throw it in the chat box. How did Marriott get started?
Good question, dude. I don't know. Now I'm excited to see. All right. Anybody know? No. Yes. What do we got?
Hot tamales.
Hot tamales? Maybe. I don't know. We'll find out.
Any other guesses?
So Marriott started by making tamales. Okay, that's
You might as well just throw something in funny then.
Yeah.
Right,
I'm gonna. You know what? Let me guess. Hold on. I'm gonna guess, Robert. Let's see. Marriott probably started. I'm gonna go with a housekeeper.
Okay. Marriott started as an A&W root beer stand.
No way.
There it is. So A&W ran a root beer stand for like 20 some years. They got started. Their vision was never to create the world's like preeminent hotel company. They started as a root beer stand. And then they fell into an opportunity where they started creating essentially packaged lunches for airliners. And that became a success, and they basically grew to like 30 accounts. Then they're like, well, maybe we should get larger into like the catering business, the hospitality business, and that obviously led to eventually hotels. But that took decades before they started getting into the hotel business. So success didn't befall them right away, but they took action and they knew basically what they believed and their purpose, and then they dominoed that into opportunities. Boeing, following World War I, there was no demand, in World War II, there was no demand for airplanes. So Boeing had to make furniture to stay afloat. And furthermore, Boeing was a fraction of the size of Douglas MacArthur. Or excuse me, McDonnell Douglas, the rival, which now they dwarf. But my personal favorite example comes from 3M. So 3M, which we all probably know for Post-it notes and the like, they started off as a sandpaper company, and they were flagging. Like, it was a diminishing sector. There was competition. It was a commodity. And so they started to branch off, and they tried to create automobile wax. And this was a really costly failure. But in doing so, one of the individuals was in an auto shop, again, for the automobile wax. But in the process of being in that auto shop trying to make a sale, he heard this really loud, a lot of cussing going on with an argument in the auto shop. And basically what had happened was, in the time, two-tone paint jobs were really popular, but there was no solution for them to basically what became masking tape to layer on so that they could prevent paints from bleeding and keep the nice lines. And so from that opportunity, from hearing that situation, that basically created a pursuit of a solution for that problem. And so masking tape was their first big success. Just because they happened to take action, they were in the auto shop, they saw an opportunity, and they went back and said, auto wax is a big failure, but sorry.
No problem. We got you. Michael, good question, buddy. This all has everything to do with building a real estate career and business.
Sorry about that.
I love the question, man. I love the question.
All right. So from masking, oh my God, sorry guys. So from masking tape, that then led into Scotch tape. And then after Scotch tape, the last iteration of this was basically, there was an individual that was in the church choir, and he got tired of thumbing through the the hymnal to try to find the songs. And so he basically created, just like he threw it together a way to mark pages so he could quickly reference them. He took the idea back, and that's what ultimately became Post-it notes. So it's not like these companies were brilliant because they had some master plan that from the get-go, we're making sandpaper, but we're going to make, gosh darn it, Post-it notes, and that's going to be the huge success. But no, they had a core belief, they had a core philosophy, they mobilized, and they found opportunities, and then they had the right people on the bus to take advantage of it. So the personnel principle here is to put your best people on the biggest opportunities, not your biggest problems. So I'll stop there. Those are my slides from today. Again, tackling the who and then the what.
Question for you. What does this, only because it came up, how do you correlate all of this with real estate? Because you run a big team all across different states and maybe in Canada now. I don't remember, buddy. But you guys do such a great job and you're continually growing. How does what you just showed me correlate with real estate in general?
Do you want to dig into a particular aspect of it? Do you want to?
Well, I think the question that we got, which was a good, valid question, it says, are we talking real estate today or what? That was the question. And I answered it, but I wanted it to come from you. Like, how can we apply these things to real estate if we're a single agent or maybe even a small team? What would you say is the most important piece of what you talked about?
Sure. I mean, so if you're a solo agent, I'm guessing you got on this call because you eventually wanted to get in the business of running a team. The second you're running, whether you're a single agent with assistants, whether you're a single agent with employees, the second you have another individual under your direction, you're thrown into the necessity of leadership. And so my presentation today is 100% about leadership. And honestly, if we're not seeing that connection there, like that's going to be a big obstacle for you to overcome. Because one of the things that partially it's because of our scale, the number of people that we have under, our umbrella and we're responsible to and for, everything is about leadership, whether it's our employees or our hundreds of team members or, every team leader has their own goals that our responsibility is to help them achieve. And so if we don't have the right people on the bus to service them, it's going to create a lot of issues for both of us. If we don't have a clear philosophy about what we expect from our employees, how can they best serve our team members who are coming to us and investing money in a partnership with us to achieve higher outcomes? So we have to get our house in order and make our own bed before we can make sure that we deliver value to our teams. So I would challenge you to have that same approach with your business. And it also applies to how you interact with your clients as well.
That's a solid response, man. And look, it's a valid question. So I love the way you answered it. So great question. That was awesome. Robert, I loved this, man. And I was going to say the best way to continually learn, like deeply learn what you're learning, is to teach it. And you just did it, dude. I was so impressed. That you did such a great job. That was really good. That was awesome. So if people have questions about your company, Robert, where would they go to?
Yeah, you can go to lucidocareers.com. I'll put it in the chat box.
I love that. And then for those of you who are wondering about the Lofty side of this, Robert and I both use Lofty as our main CRM, and it's more than a CRM. Obviously, it's everything. We run everything with it. So that's how they're integrated into this. Robert, thanks for doing this, buddy. I appreciate it. That was very good, man. That was very well done.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, everything that we talked about today is basically the foundation, and then we layer on Lofty to basically execute on all those different aspects. So having a clear roadmap of what you're trying to achieve and who's on the bus to drive that, we layer on the best tools, which in our opinion is Lofty. We've been with Lofty for 4 years now. So yeah, looks like there's a couple questions that popped in.
All right, what do we got here? Ron says, Ron's asking, is this a Chinese company, Lofty?
I don't speak for Lofty or Ren, but I do know that they're US-based companies. Their founder, Joe Chen, he's obviously Chinese by birth. He lives in the United States, and he actually created Facebook in China, raised hundreds of millions of dollars from SoftBank. So he's left the United States. He's went to Stanford Business School. He lives in Arizona. So that's basically their connection to China.
Yep. Jerry, great job, Robert, on breaking down how to run a company and creating a vision. I learned a lot from this. Jerry, I'm with you on that, buddy.
Appreciate
For
that, Jerry.
me, I really liked what stood out for me was indoctrination into the team or business. I wrote down, Robert, we do things like this. It reminded me of Seth Godin when he says, people like this do things like this, or people like us do things like this. And I was like, oh, dude, damn it. You just reminded me of that more. So that was good.
It's something that's become clear over the last 2 years because we meet with so many teams. And if I'm just being honest, we meet with a lot of teams that have a lot of success, but they don't have a lot of a tangible value prop. And so if you don't have the, the services, for example, if you're not leading with, tech or lead gen or support services, it's like, well, why are all these agents gravitating and why is their retention so high and why are they so successful? And in those situations, it's 100% because the culture they create. It doesn't matter about the TC services or the tech at that point. It matters because they want to be a part of that organization. And I hope a part of today's conversation basically got you to the point where you want to create a culture with your team. If you're a solo agent, it's a great opportunity for you to be on this because you can do it from the ground up rather than trying to correct it down the road. But create an expectation, or excuse me, create an organization that has standards and it means something to be a part of that. If you think about, the most exclusive clubs or, different members only clubs where people just pay a fortune to be a part of it, what are they really paying for? To just, the access, because it means something to be a part of that organization. So you can create that same effect by defining what your team stands for.
That was actually great, dude. Shit. That was good. Doug wants to learn more about Lofty. Kendra put up the link there for you. Doug, like I said, we both run our companies with Lofty. I run our Google PPC through there as well. Doug says, thank you for the Lofty link. Texas K Holders says, are you covering the rest of the topics on the agenda?
Is there anything else you want me to dig into? I can improv.
Yeah, I think we covered everything on the agenda, but if you have questions, go ahead and ask. We got a few more minutes, so I'm willing to wait out here for you. In the meantime, dude, what are you guys focusing on for 2024? Like, what stands out for you guys as a team?
So we're seeking to be the highest grossing commission team per transaction. We're seeking tactically to increase our commission, or our revenue per every transaction. We're very much defining a different way for establishing value as opposed to being just a service-based sales proposition. So we have a lot of stuff in the works, particularly around tech and ISA. So there's a lot of stuff in the works there, but our end goal for the end of next year is to, when someone hears Lucido Global, it's that, oh, I want to be a part of Lucido Global or Bob Lucido team in Maryland, because those agents make more revenue, make more income per transaction than any other team or network in the country.
I like that, man. And now you're looking out for the agent at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I love. I love that a lot. All right, with that, Robert, if you have any questions for Robert, you put up a link up there, lucidocareers.com. Is that how people can get a hold of you as well? If they have any questions?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Or I'll go ahead and throw my email in here as well.
All right, grab that, everyone. And if you have questions about Lofty, we have the link just scroll up. Kendra put it up there as well. There it is, Robert Lucido at lucidoglobal.com. I always love having you on, dude. You bring a different level of presentations. So I really enjoy that. So thank you.
Thank you. And if I didn't hit on any topics that people were expecting, I apologize. But if you have any questions, again, chat box. But I guess we got a couple minutes.
Yeah, man. And let's start thinking about what we can do next. I think if we're bringing you on in January, like let's say mid to end January, I'd love to talk about what Lucido Group is focusing on for 2024, so that people can see what they should be focused on. That's important to you, right? Because not everything that you're going to talk about is going to match what they're looking for. So I think the more specific topics that can match the general audience, I think that would be great.
Sounds great. Well, let's do that in January.
All right, let's do that. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. If you have questions, hit out Robert. If you have questions about Lofty, jump in there as well. Have an awesome day.
Take care. Thanks, Tristan.